Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and to start with this week we are going to finish off primering the rest of the bits of the Alfarrari. Alright guys, welcome back, and those of you watching last week will see that the body is all in epoxy primer. It's all one colour, which is fantastic, and it's been a long time coming. And I'm quite happy with how it looks. Obviously getting it all one colour, you can see a lot of the defects, and obviously there are little tiny imperfections that are going to need to be just feddled and tidied up. But overall it's looking pretty good. I am very happy with the result. If you missed it, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up and think about subscribing. It does help us out. So today, as you can see, the body is all in epoxy primer, but that doesn't mean that everything is, because we still have doors, bonnet, boot, and a couple of little panels to tidy up. So that's what I'm going to get stuck into today, is going over them, sanding them all back, doing the same process as before. I know it's probably boring, but that's the way it's got to be. It's got to be done. It's tedious work going through and doing this stuff to do it properly, and that's what I want to do with the rust converter, with the sanding it back, roughing it up, making sure everything's going to stick, and then epoxy priming it all. So enough yabbering. Let's make some space and start sanding up some panels. Okay, so I just spent a good 20 minutes trying to sand this back. I used acetone, which could just slightly loosen up the surface, and then sanding it, and realised that the primer on this is really good. I know some of you mentioned that the stuff that was on the front of the Alfa was actually one of the best primers you can have, and I didn't need to take it off. And this is on there so well, I realised that this doesn't need to come off, this surface finish. It's all well and truly roughed up with 40 grit, so I am happy to leave a little bit of it on here, and as I said, it's not coming off, so it's a good solid base for the paint to stick to. So let's do the underside and the other door and keep going. All right, so I've gone through, done the hard yards, and sanded back all of the panels. So now it's time to move the car out of the booth, and I'm going to start hanging up all these panels so that I can get to both sides of them, and then I'm going to do the rust proofing and stuff like that, so I can sort of leave them hanging and not actually have to flip them over and have them sitting on surfaces. They can actually be hanging, and I can do everything in the air. So the issue with hanging doors up, particularly using wire that's too weak, is that if it breaks and falls down, you dent it. So yeah, that's a pain. I'm going to tap this all out again. I'm still going to epoxy prime it because it's still got to be body worked later, so I should be able to make sure it all fits again, line it back up with the car again, and yeah, it's just a real pain to go through all the work I did to get this fitting perfectly, and even on this edge is one of the edges that I welded up, to have it to drop it and damage it. All right, that was really annoying with the door dropping, but got to move on, got to fix it. I should be able to hammer this out now. I'm going to tackle that. I have swapped over to using much thicker coat hanger wire instead of using thin MIG wire that I was using. So hopefully now they'll stay where they're supposed to be and don't fall again, because falling doors is not good. And particularly when I start getting some paint on these panels, I want to be able to paint them like this, and I don't want to have to redo a whole door because I dropped the thing. So fingers crossed I've got it sorted. So let's get the hammer and dolly out and see if we can fix up the damage on this door. So that is a whole lot better. That's all pretty much flat again. I'm gonna have to confirm that it is spot on when it goes back on the car again, and it'll probably take some fettling, but that's fine, because once it's got the epoxy primer on it, I still need to do little adjustments before we start doing body filler anyway. So that's not the end of the world. Let's just make sure it doesn't happen again. All right, we're all hanging up now, so I need to go through, give them all another clean, then we're going to go through and do the rust treatment like I have been doing previously. All right, we're all cleaned up, so I'm going to mix up some paint and get stuck in again, and let's get these things all under epoxy primer. Looking forward to having all of the bits done. And here we go, we have all nicely epoxy primered parts. I am quite happy. We have everything grey, which is a good start. All right, so now every bit of the car is painted. All the doors, the bonnet, the boot, all the main components are painted. But obviously we need to move forward from there, and that is where we start going through and doing some seam sealer. So I'm going to get the car on the rotisserie now, turn it up upside down. I'm going to concentrate on the underside first, and I can't find whether it's necessary or not, but I'm going to go through and scuff everything up with some Scotch-Brite, just go over all of the seams where I'm going to be painting it, and pretty much the whole thing, just to key up the epoxy primer so that it will, the next layers of paint will adhere to it nicely. So let's turn it over and start scuffing. All right, so we have everything sanded back. I ended up going through with 120 grit sandpaper. I was just happier with the really scuffing up the surface rather than just letting the Scotch-Brite do the job. Scotch-Brite probably would have been fine, but I just wanted a really good keying in there. So I used the sandpaper instead. I am now going to go over and start seam sealing the car. So what the seam sealer basically does is it closes up any of the little body seams, particularly important under the car, but I'm going to do it inside the car as well, just so that no moisture can get in there and seal it up from the outside, so that it, particularly on these sort of lap joins, if the moisture gets in there, then obviously it's going to start corroding it from the inside out. It's just going to be horrible. So seam sealing is well worth doing. For those interested, I'm using a Worth product. It's not sponsored. Just we're going to go through now and tackle all of the seams. So let's do it. All right, so you can probably see here that I haven't been super neat with the seam sealer. This stuff is very thin, so it sort of smears quite easily, and I'm just sort of pushing it around my finger, just making sure it's in all of the, any little tiny pinholes in the world or anything like that. Just going over the seams and plugging it all up with the seam sealer. Now, you can be really careful with this stuff. If you want to make it nice and neat, you can sort of lay down 2 strips of tape, put the seam sealer in between it, and then peel the tape off, and you get a nice, neat, even sort of coverage. I'm not that concerned because I am going to go over everything underneath the car and stone guard it. So that's going to fill up, it's like a textured coat you'll see later, and that will fill up sort of any slight sort of smear marks or anything like that. You won't really notice it afterwards. So I'm not going to waste heaps of time and heaps of tape by taping everything out. I'm just going to get in and do it. It's quite slow. It's taken me probably an hour to get this this stage now, but let's keep going and do the entire rest of the car. All right, that was several hours of work to do the entire underside of the car. Yeah, there's a lot of areas, you know, jumping into all the little internal pockets, and just time consuming, going through, making sure all the seams are nicely filled, and yeah, I'm happy with that. It might not be the prettiest, but as I said, it's all gonna be covered up, and the stone guard is going to hide all that texture, so it should look pretty good when I'm done. Wow, that was a lot of work. I've skipped through that on this video. It's not very interesting. It's just time consuming, but you can see here from those time lapses that I have got the shell seam sealed. It's, yeah, it's not pretty, but it doesn't really need to be. The only bits that I will need to tidy up a bit is the engine bay, because that is the bits that's going to be all painted nicely and pretty. Inside's all going to be covered. You're not going to see any bit of the interior, and you're not going to see any bit of the underside, or at least it's all going to be covered in stone guard. So that is it. That was a lot of work, but we are seam sealed. So I think that means it's time for fun facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, last week we talked about the Ferrari 365 GTC4, which was replaced in 1972 by the 365 GT4 2+2. This was quite a departure in styling for Ferrari from its fastback predecessor, with its new 3-box design by Pininfarina. It ran basically the same chassis and engine design as its predecessor, with a 4.4 Colombo V12 and with Rudge knockoff wheels. It was replaced by the 400 in 1976, which was the first ever Ferrari to be fitted with an automatic gearbox. This would seem to imply that it was intended for the US market, but Enzo Ferrari believed that with the emerging environmental and safety regulations and the new national speed limit of 55 miles per hour, that the 8-cylinder cars would suffice. This series, however, was never actually sold in the US, and it eventually evolved into the 412, which was discontinued in 1989, making it Ferrari's longest ever production series.
All right, we have seam sealer on the whole car. It's probably a quite an uneventful episode, really, because obviously it was just a lot of time without anything very interesting happening. But we are getting closer, and hopefully next week we'll be able to actually finish some areas of the car completely.
Well, not exactly next week, because actually we're going to take a few days off and we are going on a trip. We're very excited. Going to Singapore.
Yes, so any of you viewers in Singapore would like to catch up or something, reach out to us on social media somewhere. And yeah, so no episode next week, but the following week, yes, we'll be able to finish off some areas of the car, which I am very excited about.
Oh yeah.
It's just chipping away and it's getting closer and closer. But I'm looking forward to having a little bit of time off. Yeah. It's pretty full on, but it's all part of the fun.
Yep, absolutely. If you want to follow Jeff a day earlier, join him on Patron, and you get to see the videos without ads, and you just get to hear the sheer pleasure of unadulterated Jeff talking for 10 to 15 minutes when he's not banging, crashing.
Yeah.
Anyway, like and subscribe if you haven't. Let Jeff know what you think, and again, maybe see some of you in Singapore, maybe not. Anyway,
right.
Take care. Bye.
See you guys.
The Ferrari GTC 365 by the GT5.
No.
Last week we talked about the Ferrari 36 Colombo V12 with Rudge knockoff wheels, placed in 1972 by the 365 something 2+2 TC4.
GT4.
Oh,